are listening to Frog Talk, presented by Black Ribbit.
Welcome to another episode of Frog Talk. Today we're exploring something increasingly rare in today's workplace, what it means to commit 19 years to a single organization, and what that kind of loyalty reveals about culture, craft, and brand integrity. I'm joined by Peter Müller-Wille, Senior Design Engineer at Santa Cruz Bicycles, where he's spent nearly 2 decades designing full suspension mountain bikes from ideation to mass production. Peter works directly with overseas manufacturers, ensuring the highest level of quality and attention to detail, while also partnering with original equipment manufacturers, or OEMs, to ensure products meet exact specifications. With a background in geology from UC Santa Cruz and a natural talent for design, Peter brings both scientific rigor and creative vision to his work. Full disclosure, Peter and I'm personally very excited about this because Peter and I have been friends since we were 14 years old. It's a very long time. So growing up together in Paris, France, going to high school and staying close ever since. So I'm very excited to dig into his perspective on what nearly 2 decades at one company has taught him about culture, quality, and commitment. Peter, welcome.
Thanks. Good to be here.
Yeah, it's really fun. I'm very excited that you're here. So let's just dig in. 19 years at Santa Cruz Bicycles, in an era where people change jobs every 2 to 3 years, probably even less sometimes. What's kept you there? What does that kind of tenure mean? What does it teach you about workplace culture that job hoppers might miss?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's maybe a lot to that question. It's not like a super simple one. I think there's a lot of factors that go into it. First and foremost for me is I love riding bikes. I love riding mountain bikes, and I love being approached with new design problems. You know, always being able to think about new things, approach things from new aspects. And I think that this job, Santa Cruz especially, it's always been a pretty small team. So because of that, you have to be able to pivot really quickly, really easily, and, you know, wear many different hats. I've done a lot of different things at Santa Cruz, from quality control inspector to running the test lab to design and drafting tech, up until my role now as senior design engineer. So I've had the opportunity to learn a lot of different things and then build upon that knowledge. So for me, I think the biggest thing was having a place that allowed me to grow professionally and personally, and Santa Cruz continues to allow me to do that. I think another thing for me is, you know, since I started working at Santa Cruz, I got married, I had a kid. Finding stability is very important as I'm building my family, and, you know, being able to have that stability and still be challenged and enriched professionally and personally by my job, I think is an awesome combination to have.
Yeah, to your point, you covered a lot there.
Yeah.
So I want to go back in time a little bit. You talked about you love mountain biking. I mean, I know you're an avid rider, and you've been an avid rider for a long time. I want to talk about passion for a moment. You studied geology and even considered starting a career in that field. Aside from riding over them, mountain bikes is a pretty big jump, pun intended, from that field, from rocks. What pulled you in that direction? Like, what can you tell our audience about choosing a career path? This was, in my observation, it was very much a decision made through passion.
Totally. So after I had gotten out of university, I did work for a consulting geologist in Santa Cruz. So that involved, you know, providing geologic surveys, mostly hazard assessments for people building homes in the hills here, because we have a lot of landslides and active faults. So you need to have a little bit more rigor when you're building a house. At that time, I was working for a very small company, and my boss was going through a lot of personal stuff. He wasn't really bringing in new work. So honestly, at that time, it was more about making enough money to live.
Yeah.
And I was really into bikes. I saw an opening at Santa Cruz Bicycles. I didn't even have health insurance at the time. So this was like, oh wow, I get health insurance, I get a 401k, I get a steady paycheck. Like this is amazing to me. So those were like probably some of the biggest things that pushed me in that direction. But as I started working there, everybody that works at Santa Cruz is passionate about bikes. They're passionate about what they do. It's a really, I think, a unique collection of people working under one roof. I'm not the only one who's worked there for almost 20 years. There's a lot of other people who have worked there for 15 to 25 years, which I think, like you said, is really rare these days.
Yeah. How old is Santa Cruz Bikes now?
It was founded in 1994, so that would be 31 now.
Yeah. Yeah. So you also mentioned earlier that this company offers you, continues to offer you opportunities to learn and to consistently grow and like really feed that passion of yours, that it's not just about riding, but it's about good design. It's about quality. It's about, serving potentially your market. What have you seen change? Has anything changed? I mean, I imagine, again, 20 years is a long time. We've gone through so much globally as a population, nationally, economically. I mean, the list goes on and on in terms of what's actually happened and the turmoil that we've experienced in the last 20 years. How has that impacted the company, your own experience? Have you seen, what have you seen in others that work with you? I know people work, you have a team as well. Do you lead a team as well?
I don't technically lead the team, but I do provide mentorship to our more junior designers. I mean, over 20 years, a lot's happened, right? Like I started at Santa Cruz before the 2008 recession. That was a really scary time. Like the company almost went under. When I was hired, I think I was employee 45 or something like that. And then it got up into the 60s. And then when 2008 happened, it got pulled back down to 30 something employees for the whole company. So that was scary. And our owner at the time, Rob Roskop, he put up a lot of his own money to keep the company going because it was something that he really believed in. And then once we recovered, he wanted to look for more opportunities to allow the company to grow. And that involved selling to Pon Holdings, which is a corporation from the Netherlands, and they have a large bicycle portfolio. So that was a big change. Like Santa Cruz coming from this kind of garage tech company, working out of, we worked in a cannery. Literally they used to put fish and vegetables into cans in this building. And there's no heat and tin roofs. And now, we work in this amazing office. It's the former Wrigley Gum building. And we have this awesome showroom, and it's just so much more professional. And I think that growing and selling to Pon allowed us to get to that next level of professionalism and also expand internationally. So with that came opening shops in Germany and France, really a lot of expansion over the 2010 period, 2010 to 2018, 2020. So that was a huge change. We went from having 100 employees here in Santa Cruz to having 400 or 500 globally. So with that, a lot of process had to change with Santa Cruz. It felt like corporatization at the time, but really when you grow, you just have to organize so much more. So going through that phase of organization was huge for Santa Cruz, and I don't think that we'd be here now if we hadn't done that.
Yeah, absolutely. M&A is a major focus of mine because of, my program focuses on culture and brand and ensuring that there's harmony within an organization. So in essence, we're operationalizing and systematizing both culture and brand, which are consequences of behavior, both of which are consequences of behavior. Both exist whether you want them to or not. It's a question of whether you design them intentionally. And M&A is a hotbed for, that kind of disruption and culture clash. And, is everyone experiencing the same thing? Are the experiences that people were having remaining consistent? A lot of people bail A lot of people are afraid of that change. There's a lot of secrecy happening. Did you experience any of that kind of turmoil? I think you and I talked when that was happening. That was a long time ago. And
Yeah, that was like 2013 or 14, I think, was when like the big changes started coming. And yeah, I mean, there's definitely some resistance. Like I had some resistance to it at first. Like, oh, you know, like we're this awesome, cool little company and we can pivot fast and everybody does all these things. And now like corporate's coming in and telling us what to do and making us fill out forms. And I mean, it's change and there's always resistance to change. But when you want to change your company into something bigger, something better, something more, then you have to do these other changes as well. Otherwise, you lose what it is that makes the company special. You know, you have to plan out the big things so that you're not thinking about them all the time, so you can still focus on maintaining your company culture, which is, I think, something that you work on as well.
yeah, absolutely. The tension is where we grow, right? Like we grow through adversity.
Yeah.
You need that resistance, that change. I mean, I always say, you know, the best changes come when they're intrinsic, when they feel unconscious. You know, you don't even really realize that it's happening. So when you can create change through good design, then those that are being impacted by it don't even really realize that it's happening. It's kind of like, again, it's under the radar and it's intrinsic. And I always say, you know, the greatest resistance to any sort of extrinsic change is war, literally. Like that's like the worst possible outcome when it comes to extrinsic change, if you want to use those kinds of case studies. So when in your at your company, was what took place to actually maintain and savor that the culture that was, did the culture change? Was the culture honored through that change? What kind of transformation did you experience on that capacity?
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, I think, like, looking back on it now, one of the things that I realized changed the most is when I started, it was like, everybody was pretty young, I would say, like mid 20s, early 30s generally. And these people all have stuck with the company. So you see your employees age and grow. And now all of a sudden, like everybody used to be partying, riding bikes, like having a good time. And now like we all have families. So you go to our company events and it's like a very different vibe where it's all like very family friendly. So that's one of the biggest changes. But it sounds maybe like it's lame to change that way. But I think it's really cool because you know, you see all of your coworkers and your employees and your friends grow with you.
Yeah.
And we've still maintained a culture of everybody talking to each other. You know, there's friends in all different departments. There's not like nobody's siloed off. We try and be really open with everything, you know, with what's happening with the company financially, with what's happening with our design plans, you know, what new products are coming out. We try to be really open and include everyone that's an employee at Santa Cruz in all of the information. And that's something that's been true since since I started there. And that's one of the things that has definitely kept me here was that honesty.
So if you had to describe the culture of Santa Cruz Bikes in one word, what would it be?
I would say honest because the bikes that we design are very true to what we believe in, how we want to ride, what sort of design ethos that we have, and also how we work with customers is very honest. We try to be very transparent about everything. So, I don't know, it sounds a little cliche, but I think that that's one thing that I really appreciate about working at Santa Cruz is that honesty, that truthfulness, the taking reality and saying this is what it is, not trying to hide it or push it under the rug.
Yeah, that's cool. And it's bikes made by bikers.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah, that in itself, you know, that goes a long way. It's very much like we do know what we're talking about. We physically use the things that we create ourselves. right?
Yeah. I mean, we have in our design department, everyone is so passionate. We argue about the smallest details on a bike.
Yeah.
That like so often we say like we're arguing about this thing for a week, and like is the customer even going to notice it, or is this just to make ourselves happy? You know?
Yeah, I can definitely relate to that. And I get mad at I get really mad when people are like, no one's even gonna notice. I go, I notice, you notice,
Yeah.
we'll notice. Like it'll go into the market and we'll be like, look, that's that
Yeah.
thing we wanted to change and it sucks.
Yeah, I can look back on some projects and there's like very small details, and I'm like, oh, I wish I had just like done it a little bit different. And I mentioned it to somebody, and they're like, what are you even talking about? But I think that's the difference between good design and mediocre design, is that like that passion.
Absolutely.
Really.
Yeah, and those micro nano details are really what make it different. Again, like you and I have talked about this forever. Nobody notices good design. Everybody notices bad design. You know, trained people notice good design. It's really interesting when you ask someone, you know, if you ask someone about a bad design, a bad experience, they will give you a laundry list of reasons. And it's often functional, which is really interesting. And it's a list of functional reasons. And as a designer who wants to optimize, you're like, this is amazing. This is just gold. Like, give me more, give me more. And then when you ask someone why something is good, they can never tell you. They always give you some emotional response, which is also really interesting. They'll be like, I don't know, it just feels good. It you know, it makes me feel good. And you're like, I can't do anything with that.
Yeah, or a lot of times with bicycles, it's like the products that are the favorite are the ones that just work.
Yeah, right.
You know, they're like, I don't have to worry about it. It just works when I want it to work. You know, that's like the highest praise you can get almost.
It just does what it's supposed to do.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, getting back to you were talking about like the staff, your company, your peers, all of you are getting older. You now have families, and you're kind of getting it's impacting the lifestyle of the company itself and so on. How does long-term commitment to one company change your relationship to the work itself, like especially in a creative field like design?
So this is something that I've been thinking about a lot recently, and I think with designers, there's an inherent desire to do things for yourself, to kind of self-promote, to say like, here's something that I did, here's this idea that I had. And I think for me, having this longevity here allows me to kind of put myself aside more and see Santa Cruz as a bigger picture. It's not me designing these bikes. Like, we don't come out and say, oh, here's a new Peter Müller-Wille bicycle. It's a Santa Cruz bike. So I can really kind of put myself aside and focus on the work at hand, focus on the project. It's not about me, which makes it easier to take criticisms. It makes it easier to go to a design review and hear all of these little things instead of, you know, I think when you're so personally invested, it's easy to take that as criticism almost of yourself, when it's not. You know, we're all just sitting around trying to make this thing better. And I think being in one place for a really long time allows me to see that more objectively.
I really appreciate that you said that. As a designer, that's the distinction I make between artists and designers. Artists take everything personally. Artists want to put their name in front of everything, and get really emotionally attached to the work, emotionally attached to, I mean, you know this as well as I do, like they cannot take criticism, they cannot take feedback without getting like angry sometimes. But designers by trade are trained to basically put themselves behind the work, and it is a more macro effort. It's about, you know, the impact that it makes. What is the purpose of this thing? It's a very purposeful kind of a field, as it were. I mean, the entire man-made world is a product of design. So like, you know, as designers, it's always function and then form, function and then form. In art, there sometimes isn't even a function, at least not a functional function. It's an emotional function. And
yeah, I mean, nobody requires art to perform in certain ways. Like art is there, I think, to elicit an emotional response.
Sure.
Whereas design needs to do that as well as perform something else that's more tangible.
Correct. Exactly right. Which is actually why like branding is so interesting. Branding and culture work is so interesting because they're so elusive. They're so ethereal. They're like invisible essentially. But
Yeah.
you're creating function out of something you can't even see or touch, but it does elicit a specific response, like you said. And that distinction between artists and designers is interesting anyway. I myself it took me a long time to put myself in front of the work. I'm the opposite of you. I actually kept myself behind the scenes for so long that when I went out on my own, that became a problem because now
Sure.
I had to like promote myself and talk about me and have me be in front of the work because you can't create a brand if you don't do that. No one knows who you are if you're behind the work all the time. And we talk about, but let the work speak for itself. It's like, that's fine, but then people have to know where the work came from.
Yeah.
So like, in order for you to get more work. So it's an interesting dynamic there.
Definitely.
So you work directly with overseas manufacturers. I know you actually travel to do quality control and go work with your overseas partners and colleagues. How have those relationships evolved over nearly 2 decades? What role does trust play? Like, do you work with the same people even overseas?
Yeah. That's a great question. When I first started, we had a variety of manufacturers that we worked with, and it was more like contract manufacturing, I would say at that time. We had someone in Taiwan who would travel around and he would go to different factories, meet people, and say, "Oh, like we could work with this factory, we could produce this frame at this factory, so on and so on." I think it was around 2013, 14, with the Pon acquisition. And we partnered with a new factory that was starting. So this was a factory in China to produce our carbon fiber frames. And they were essentially taking technology that we had worked on with a contract manufacturing firm and went off, started their own thing that was pretty exclusive to Santa Cruz. For a while, they only manufactured mountain bikes for us, for nobody else. They didn't make frames for anyone else. As our relationship with Pon grew, there were more brands in the Pon umbrella that started being manufactured there. But I think for us, it was really the trust part that you mentioned, was that now we have this manufacturing partner. We can put a lot of trust in them. We can develop new technologies and trust that it will be used on our frames only. Protecting our IP, figuring out new problems, figuring out new manufacturing solutions, and then knowing that these are going to be used for us and not, put on somebody else's bike. So working with that manufacturing partner with that level of trust has been, I think, integral to our success as a frame manufacturer. I don't think we would be anywhere near where we are now without having that.
And you've been with them since then, so that's like 12 years, something like that?
Yeah, like 10 or 12 years, somewhere in there.
Yeah. And they're still just exclusively working with you.
Yeah, they do work with a couple other brands, but those brands are also under the Pon umbrella, so it's still like working in the same company pretty much.
Got it. So that must just give you so much opportunity to really stand out in your market, just do some pretty innovative stuff.
Yeah, we for a long time, I mean, it's like you just have to push product out for a certain like that's the real part of working in a company where you have to sell things, is you have to make things that you can then sell, right? Like you can't just work on a product for like 10 years and have it not come out. Like, where are you going to get money to pay your people? Like, it just doesn't work that way. So there's, I think, a thing that's really difficult and that we're still trying to figure out the best way to do it is how can we blend production with R&D? because we need to make these new products, but we also need to invest in research and development so that we can continue to stay on top where we are in terms of manufacturing and frame performance, right? So last year we did invest in a pure R&D project with our manufacturing partner, specifically to focus on new manufacturing techniques, new methods, new materials. And then this became a platform for us that whenever we have a new idea, we say, oh, let's go back to this project. Let's plug in this new idea. We can test it outside of a production environment. It's not linked to any sort of like ROI at all. Like this just purely lives as like almost
like
a
a
thought
lab.
experiment. Yeah, it's really cool. It's
That
new
is
for us,
cool.
and I think we've been seeing a lot of developments from it that our customers are going to see next year.
Yeah, that is cool. That sounds so much fun, actually.
It was one of the most fun projects I've ever worked on,
Yeah, I
hands
believe
down.
it. Yeah. So Santa Cruz Bikes, speaking of, has a strong brand reputation in the mountain
Yeah.
biking world. From the inside, you touched on this a little bit already. How does company culture shape that external brand perception?
I think it directly shapes that. Um,
Yeah.
our external perception is very much a core mountain bike brand. We're not. I'm gonna start like making some car analogies. Maybe they'll float, maybe they won't. We'll see. But I mean, we try to position ourselves as like a luxury brand, but also performance. And I think we look at Porsche as a brand that I think exhibits a really good blend of luxury but performance. And also in terms of design, because their design is really timeless. Like you can look at a Porsche from 30 years ago and one today, and that design carries through. So that's really important for us in terms of design. But like with company culture, we're very honest about that. Like we kind of wear our heart on our sleeves. Like we all love to ride. Our CEO, we had a new CEO a year or 2 years ago, and I mean he came from Pon, and I think there was a little trepidation, and he fit right in. He's awesome. He's riding bikes with everybody. He's hanging out. He's going to events, and that's, I think, the core of Santa Cruz is like we want to be entrenched in mountain bike community. We want to be entrenched in mountain bike culture because that's how we all live. So
Yeah.
it's easy for us to be honest with our customers, I think.
It just feels inherent.
Yeah, like we're not bending over backwards to convince people of this, that, or the other
Yeah.
thing. It's just what we do.
Yeah. Um, that's so cool. So then kind of going back a little bit, but speaking to this, what is the tension between creative design ideation and the reality of mass production? And how does your company culture, this sort of honest luxury, as it were, influence how that tension might get resolved?
Yeah, I think um, sometimes there's a lot of desire to just make things look different without thinking about the effects of that. And I think that's something that we at Santa Cruz do really well is we don't want to just add embellishments for the sake of adding embellishments. There's got to be a reason. There's got to be a purpose. We want to think about like you can look at an initial ID design sketch for almost any product on the planet, and an engineer can sit there and be like, well, this is why this isn't going to work. This is why this isn't going to work. So I think our ID team is very knowledgeable about manufacturing process and end use scenarios. So they take that into account when they're coming up with their concepts. So when I work with them, there's not a lot of like, oh, well, you just can't do that because they know because of manufacturing constraints that like the radius on this tube has to be this amount.
Yeah.
If you make a
very
tighter radius,
pragmatic.
then yeah, it's a pragmatic approach. And I think you could argue that our design is conservative because it hasn't changed a lot, but that's very much on purpose because it allows us to focus on other things like ride quality, like making the right bike for the right person at the right time, making sure our suspension is leading in the industry. We're not spending a bunch of time making sure that it's got all these eye-catching features or has like the newest colors of paint. I mean, I think we have pretty good paint choices on our bikes, but there's not a bunch of decals everywhere that make it look busy. I think our design ethos is like simple and understated, but classic is what we usually go for.
Yeah. And again, just that it works.
Yeah, which I think holds true with, like I was talking about, honesty from the brand. It's being very honest in our approach to design.
Yeah, I always love this saying when it comes to design. There's no fat on it. It's just as lean as it can possibly be. There's no extra stuff. You can't make this any simpler than it is. It's just elegant. It works. Yeah. It's beautiful. It does what it's supposed to do, and it's efficient. It's effective. Like all the fun adjectives. Yeah. I feel like that's what I'm hearing.
Yep. I mean, you've understood what I've been trying to say then. Absolutely. That's something I think we talk about a lot internally is like, we all like very simple, clean things.
Yeah.
So that's what we want to make. We want to make it simple. We want to make it clean. We want to make it work as well as or better than anything else that's out there.
Yeah. So you talked about, aside from like the biker culture, bikers for bikers, this is the lifestyle. You've seen a lot of people come and go over the last 19 years, especially with the acquisition and the various economic turns and so on. What separates the people who stay from the people who leave? Whether it's voluntary or not.
Yeah, I think that's a tough question. I think like some people have left Santa Cruz because it's so expensive to live here.
Yeah.
Honestly, I mean, it's one of the most expensive places to live in the United States of America right now. Yeah. And I think that presents a problem for a lot of people. So there's people that have left because of that. I think some people maybe weren't able to challenge themselves as they wanted to be challenged and needed to find a role elsewhere. Like maybe they hit the ceiling of what was possible with their role. I can't think of a single person that's left out of anger or unhappiness. It's usually a personal reason more than anything else.
Yeah. Are you we're getting into territory that's near and dear to my heart, which is hiring, recruiting, right people in the right places, right butts in the right seats, as they say.
Yeah.
Are you ever part of the hiring process? Are you ever hiring anyone? Are you doing interviews and things like that?
For the engineering department and design department specifically, I am part of that process with almost every person that we interview. So for the engineering and design department, when we're vetting new candidates, there's usually like a first email between HR and the candidate, just making sure everything's fine, no red flags. And after that, it's a phone call between the director of engineering and that candidate, and usually engineering manager and maybe the director of design. But that's like a quick phone call. They'll ask them a couple questions, see if everything's good in terms of just their professionalism and how well they know the subject. And after that, we bring the person in for an interview at Santa Cruz, and they'll meet the whole team. So we'll do an interview where they present some engineering things they like, some design things they like, and explain to us why they like these solutions. And that's really our opportunity to vet the person as a human being, to see their thought process, to see what makes them excited about design, and to ask them difficult questions, see what they think about how their brain works. And I think it's really important when you're hiring to fit into a team to bring the team into that hiring process, because how else are you going to know if everybody is going to work well together? So for us, I think that's like one of the most important things when we hire.
I really like the last part. Especially for a design or creative company, because it highlights the co-creative nature of what you do. And I think that's actually really smart. It's a good tactic. What is like what are you looking for across the board when it comes to hiring for Santa Cruz Bikes? There's always a non-negotiable, something that needs to stand out and something that cannot be crossed. What are those qualities that you look for? Like, is there a barometer, as it were?
Well, I mean, there's like the basement level, like don't fall asleep in your interview. Um, like as a bare minimum, that's probably a good thing to not do, which I have seen. Or like coming to your interview with clean clothing, I think is like really important. Because that kind of gives you a quick view into someone's personal life, really easily.
Yeah.
I think for me, thought process is really important. Like
Yeah.
presenting someone with a problem and seeing how they would go about solving it, is one of the most important things for me. I will never forget this interview that we had with a candidate, and they showed us a previous project, and I said my question was, okay, so you've done this project, what would you change? And he said, nothing. I nailed it. For me, that was an instantaneous red flag. If you can't be able to be critical of your own work, then I don't think that you can be successful as a designer.
Yeah.
That was like instant red flag for me.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's the underlying truth of design, because it's a constant, it's a mechanism of constant optimization. Design by definition is a never-ending optimization cycle. So yeah, that makes that's arrogance and ego, right? It's like when I talk to there's a lot of change management that goes on in our deliverable when we deliver our program. I always say our program is like those old school in the old days. Remember when we wanted to upgrade our software or something, you would buy the software in a box. It would come on CDs with like manuals and stuff, and like it was like depending on what the software was or games or whatever, they always had beautiful packaging with that matte smooth finish, and you could like open it. They had windows and all this stuff, and that's like the culture brand program is that we're basically handing them this thing, which is like a roadmap. It has manuals and how-tos and all the stuff that you need to use to succeed and grow and scale and transform over the next 3 to 5 years. But then you have to install it, right? Like the installation has to happen. Otherwise, it's just a pretty box in the corner of your office. And during that time, I've spoken to many, specifically COOs, who are basically like, they're speaking for 70 people, 80 people, 120 people, and they're like, no, my people won't do this. My people won't do that. These guys won't. I know these people like the back of my hand. And I'm literally like, are you so arrogant that you think you know every single person, like just intimately? You probably don't even know your kids as well as you think you do. Like, that's an insane thing to say. Like, no, they're not going to do that. Like, how do you even know that? How can you possibly know that? That's crazy. It's just when I hear those kinds of things, man, I'm always like, that's why we do the research. You should go ask them. And then if they say no, I will close the door and be like, you were right. But to say 160 people all together would just be like, no, we're not going to do this. That's crazy.
Yeah.
So I always think about this when it comes to your field. How does your geology background influence the way you think about design, problem solving, and organizational culture?
Yeah, that's interesting. Like obviously I'll be out on a bike ride and I'm like, ooh, a pretty rock. Yeah. And I want to think about it, but that's not directly relatable to work. I think with my geology training, it was always very important to be rigorous, to leave, pun intended, no stone unturned. And also organization, I think, was something that I learned really early on. And that being rigorous applies to design, applies to manufacturing, applies to engineering. Like, you really need to look at every single detail. You have to consider everything. Otherwise, you're not going to get the complete picture. You won't have a proper understanding of what you're looking at, of the problem at hand. And then I think just organization, maybe that's a bit more obvious because organization helps with everything. If you're sitting there constantly worrying about where things need to go, if you don't have a system, you're spending so much of your energy doing the same thing every day. And if you're organized and you have a system, then you can trust in that system. You can place all your trust in it, and you can focus on the important things that you're dealing with and right in front of you. So I'd say those are probably the two most important things.
Yeah, that's a nugget right there, the organizational quote. The
my wife makes fun of me because I have systems for everything.
Yeah.
And like I teach my kid, I'm like, okay, let's make a system for this, and then you don't have to worry about it. And she makes fun of me, and I'm like, yeah, but it like helps. It's easy. It takes problems out of our lives. And
that's right.
She begrudgingly gives it to me nowadays. She's like, okay, we'll use your system.
Yeah. Well, whatever you, especially these days, man, whatever you can automate, you should automate. Because we're so busy. We're just so damn busy. Like, we shouldn't be thinking about monotonous, just to your point, redundant stuff. That should just be automated. What about specifically, because I'm just personally very curious about this, like specifically understanding geology, this is a genuine question, does it impact how you, like thinking about terrain application with a bike, like how it touches the ground and how it touches various terrains and so on? Does that knowledge come in handy when you're designing, say, suspension or the makeup of a frame?
To a certain extent, but I think where that becomes complicated is there's such a wide variety of terrain that bikes are ridden upon, and that makes it really hard to create models and analyze how mountain bikes work, just because there's such a vast array of variables. And I think that geology, I think anything that you learn about in college or in university is like a lens for you to solve problems in a lot of ways. I think that's really what school teaches you the most, is how to solve problems, how to approach it. And I think
you would hope
with geology, there's just like, you stand there and you're looking at a field and you're like, how do I approach this? You start with what's right in front of you. You know, you just have to break it up into pieces. And that's, I bring that approach to problem solving. Like, it's this big problem. What are we going to do? You got to break it up. You got to tackle each individual little part. And what seemed like this insurmountable thing at the beginning, you tackle like 3, 4, 5 small parts of it, and all of a sudden it starts to come into focus. And you can be like, oh, I can start to see how this is going to resolve itself in the end. So I think it's that problem solving process for me is what carried over the most, as opposed to just like, oh, well, you're riding on granite or there's loose rocks, so we want to design the bike this way. It's more of the thought process for me.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's very much like design thinking, specifically the mechanism of the mechanics of design thinking. What have you learned about brand loyalty, both as an employee and in how customers relate to SC Bikes?
Well, Santa Cruz Bikes has a really loyal brand following. I think part of that is due to the honesty that we have in our marketing and our design ethos. I think also, us being a California brand, you see a lot of Santa Cruz Bikes in California. People like to buy local, think local. Even though our frames aren't made here, we still design everything here. We still assemble everything here. Everything is shipped from Santa Cruz. So it's very much, we care about the people that work at the company. And I think that shines through in how we talk to customers. So I think all of that is pretty important for brand loyalty. I think maybe bringing in new customers might be a bit more difficult than holding on to old customers. So finding ways to get people excited about it, younger people excited about it, because there's a lot of people that, saw Santa Cruz as this aspirational brand in like the early 2000s, and they've hung on since then. But like, how do we get an 18-year-old kid to be excited about our bikes? And I think for us, we have a racing team on the World Cup downhill circuit called the Syndicate, and we've brought on a lot of like new, very exciting young talent. And I think that it's through that team that we can really reach kind of a newer audience and bring in new people.
Yeah, that makes sense. And thank you for touching on that, because I was going to ask you about the younger, how do you capture the attention of the younger market category in your market share? Looking back on 19 years, nearly 20 years, what would you tell someone just starting their career? This is the big question these days, about the value of depth versus breadth in building a professional life.
I would say be patient. It's like the hardest thing to learn. And I mean, I'm still learning how to be patient. I think having a kid has been huge in me learning how to be patient. And like when you're starting out, it's really hard to force yourself to wait, because, you're out of school, like you're fresh. There's still like, you think you know all of this stuff, but there's still so much to learn. You still have so much growing to do. And like I said earlier, that's one of the things I love about working at Santa Cruz, is it's still presenting me with new problems, still presenting me with growth opportunities. And I think if you don't have that, that's where you get stagnant and you get bored, and then you're like, well, I need a different job. I need a new job. So I think being patient and being open to just learning from everyone that you possibly can are the two most important things starting out. Also, just like not being afraid to fail. Failure is like the best teacher in the world. And I think so many people are scared to fail that it keeps them from putting their ideas out there. So just like having a willingness and an openness to failure is super important.
Yeah, man, that's it right there. That's unfortunately a big problem in the especially in the younger generation these days. The fear of failure is very loud. Is it okay if our audience would like to reach out to you, if they reach out to you?
Sure.
How can they find you?
You could find me on LinkedIn. It's probably the easiest way to get in touch with me. Just search my name, Peter Müller-Wille. I don't think there's any more of me out there in the world, so it should be pretty easy. And I guess you'll provide a spelling of my name somewhere in the...
Yes.
Yeah, so that should be pretty straightforward. Easiest way. I'm on there pretty frequently. Just drop me a message. I try to respond as quickly as I can, and I do try to respond to anybody that messages me.
Wonderful. Peter, brother, thank you so much for being here. It was a pleasure talking to you. I'm so glad we did this.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me. That was really fun. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Alrighty. Thanks, everyone, for listening. We'll catch you next time.